He's been called a petulant teenager. Did you ever see a teenager that didn't get his way and he got mad and he sulked and then he started being mean to people? Have you ever run into teenagers like that? Of course, Sherry's here. You wouldn't have teenagers like that, would you?
Never.
No?
Never.
Well, would you elect one and put him in the Oval Office like that?
Not
well,
hardly.
we got one, ladies and gentlemen, and the tensions are rising between America and another country. Russia, no. Iran, no. They're all our buddies. China, you all know. They're all friends. Our closest ally, Israel, they are the recipients of the petulant teenager. Terry.
Well, now the United States says Israel was spying on the nuclear talks with Iran, something that Israel denies. George Thomas brings us the story.
The Wall Street Journal, citing unnamed sources, says Israel was spying on negotiations between the United States and Iran. In trying to build a case against any potential deal with Iran, the newspaper says Israel obtained confidential information from U.S. briefings, informants, and diplomatic contacts in Europe, then shared that intelligence with U.S. lawmakers. One senior U.S. official told the paper that it's one thing for the U.S. and Israel to spy on each other. It's another for Israel to steal U.S. secrets and play them back to legislators to undermine U.S. diplomacy. The U.S. says it learned about the Israeli spying operations from America's own spies, who intercepted some Israeli messages. Israel denies that it was spying. It says it got the information on the Iran talks in other ways, like watching Iran's leaders and speaking with European officials about the Iran talks. This latest spat between the two countries comes as the White House continues to criticize Netanyahu for comments he made about a Palestinian state toward the end of Israel's election campaign. On Monday, Obama's top advisor questioned the Israeli Prime Minister's sincerity while addressing a left-wing Jewish group.
Such contradictory comments call into question his commitment to a two-state solution.
Netanyahu later said he wants a two-state solution, but under the right conditions. But the White House has kept up its criticism. McDonough also warned that Israel's so-called occupation of Palestinian land must end, and that drew thunderous applause from the crowd.
An occupation that has lasted for almost 50 years must end, and the Palestinian people must have the right to live in and govern themselves in their own sovereign state.
Republican Senator Lindsey Graham slammed McDonough's speech, saying the language used by the Chief of Staff of the President of the United States is exactly what Hamas uses. Arizona Senator John McCain also weighed in, calling President Obama to put aside his personal issues with the Israeli Prime Minister.
The President should get over it. Get over your temper tantrum, Mr. President. It's time that we work together with our Israeli friends and try to stem this tide of ISIS and Iranian movement throughout the region, which is threatening the very fabric of the region. The President has his priorities so screwed up that it's unbelievable.
George Thomas, CBN News.
I fear for America being led by something like this. But you know what the problem was? They said, it's okay if the Israelis listen in on our negotiations and they find out what we're talking about with the Iranians. That's okay. Just don't tell the Congress about it. Don't tell the United States Congress. I mean, the Congress are the ones that put on the sanctions. And Obama's trying to take the sanctions off unilaterally. And I heard Lindsey Graham a couple of days ago saying, listen, the Congress put them on. The Congress has to take them off. The President can't take off the sanctions that the Congress put on. But he's ignored the Congress. And the gravamen, if I can use that term, against Israel is that the Israeli Secret Service told the United States Congress what Obama was doing. This is crazy. The whole thing is like another world. It's like Alice in the Looking Glass. One commentator today was talking about George Orwell and 1984 and what, you know, good is bad and sugar is sour and all the rest of it. That we have just turned things on their head. But again, petulant teenager, didn't get his way, didn't get what he wants, but it's dangerous for Netanyahu. I mean, Obama is now going to take the full weight of the United States government against him, and they can hurt the Israelis in the United Nations. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll say it again, if this nation goes against Israel, God Almighty will go against this nation. It's going to happen, and it will hurt all of us. So it's not just those guys in Washington, it will be everybody. And disaster will follow disaster upon this nation if we turn our backs on Israel and we try to. The Bible talks about touch not mine anointed, and I tell you, you lay hands on God's anointed and bad things happen to you. Well, in other news, Republicans and Democrats in Congress are sending President Obama a warning about those peace talks with Iran. Wendy Griffith has that story from the CBN newsroom. Here's Wendy.
That's right, Pat. 367 members of the House of Representatives have sent the president a letter telling him that any deal with Iran has got to close the path to a nuclear bomb. The Hill reports the letter says that only then will Congress consider lifting economic sanctions on Iran. The Iranians want the sanctions lifted right now, something the U.S. and Europeans oppose. Many critics question if Iran is serious about a deal that would stop their nuclear program, and some point to a rally in Iran over the weekend when the crowd shouted, "Death to America." The supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah Khamenei, agreed, saying, of course, yes, death to America. And he criticized the U.S. for putting sanctions on Iran. It appears there are no survivors from a terrible plane crash in France today. Nearly 150 people were on the Germanwings flight that crashed in a remote area. The Germanwings airline is a subsidiary of Lufthansa, the airline that regularly flies Germans around Europe. The plane was an Airbus 320 European jet.
It was on a normal route that you would expect en route to Dusseldorf, and as they crossed towards Italy, into the southern Alps there was a significant altitude change, a huge descent, and they lost radar contact at 6,800 feet, obviously somewhere in the mountains there. So very baffling to see something that would indicate that the aircraft was just fine at altitude en route, and then for some reason a big descent into very high terrain.
So sad. The jet had reached 38,000 feet before it started to fall. Radar lost it just under 7,000 feet. Well, here at home, the calendar says spring, but winter is refusing to let go of its grip on some parts of the country. New York is getting ready for up to 3 to 6 inches of snow, and people there say they've had enough.
Ready for it to be over.
I'm ready for it to be over also.
Wow.
I had enough of it.
Madison, Wisconsin got roughly 5 inches of snow, with 15 inches falling in other parts of the state. Parts of Iowa and Minnesota got 10 inches to nearly a foot of snow. And forecasters say that a strong winter storm is hitting Minnesota and bringing a mix of rain, freezing rain, and snow to North and the South Dakotas. Well, Pat, what are we going to do?
Baby, it's cold out there, but here in Tidewater, well, it's fairly balmy. We had an outdoor concert yesterday with the Oak Ridge boys, and they were a little chilly. But we had some
brisk out there, but I'm seeing daffodils and crocuses.
Well, they're coming up despite the weather, but it's about 50, and it was about, what was it, 40-some yesterday. Outside, if you warmed up, you bundled up, it was okay, but that isn't minus whatever like it is out in Minnesota.
Yeah. What is it they say?
Well, you grew up in Wisconsin. Was it cold? When did you stop being cold?
I'm still cold. That's why I live here.
All right. Okay.